I am shocked, I tell you, to discover that we as a nation are reacting to the coronavirus scare as if we are a profoundly polarized people. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Personal Responsibility Lawyer Podcast. I am your host, Michael Lovins of the law firm Lovins Trosclair. We are here today to talk about the coronavirus, or is it COVID-19? I don't really know, but I think that the virus is the novel coronavirus, and the disease that it causes is COVID-19. But I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to use those as if they are interchangeably one and the same thing, because for my purposes, they are. But here's what we know about the coronavirus, and that is, it is either a great big nothing, and we should go on about our lives as normal, as if nothing happens, as if nothing has happened, and anyone who does anything in response to the coronavirus is just another example of a hysterical snowflake losing their minds. Or we're all going to die by this Tuesday, Eastern Daylight Time, close of business. It's one or the other, and apparently there's nothing in between. At least that's what you would gather if you're looking at most of the internet, cable news, which I'm speculating a bit there, although I've watched a little, but very little. Social media, the whole thing. I recently discussed with you my aggressive, belligerent ambivalence about the impeachment of Donald Trump. My ambivalence was because I thought that both sides and their extreme positions were wrong. I didn't buy into their mutual declarations of impending apocalypse. No matter how that impeachment came out, you had one side predicting doom, and I didn't buy into either one of them. My thoughts today about the novel coronavirus are similar in that I think both extremes are very wrong. In this case, I would say very dangerously wrong. But I am not ambivalent. I'm far from ambivalent. In fact, I have a very, very strong opinion. I'm recording this in mid-March, Friday the 13th, somewhat ironically, I suppose. We are in the middle of March Madness, but we have no basketball. The NBA has been suspended indefinitely. The college basketball tournaments, which are my absolute favorite sports event of the year, every year, and have been since I was a kid, they have been completely canceled. Sports are not the only things that are being canceled. Concerts and schools are being canceled, conferences and all sorts of things. Any place where there's more than a few people gathered together are being canceled, and it is something we have never seen in our lifetimes. It is crazy and a little bit scary. Maybe you're not worried about how sick the coronavirus might make you. I'm actually not terribly worried about what would happen to me if I get the coronavirus. But we have a responsibility to each other. If I get it, I may not get all that sick, but before I know that I have it, I may give it to someone who could actually die from it. So I have a responsibility to others to take reasonable measures to avoid contracting it myself. As much as I hate to admit this isn't all about me, and it's not all about you either. First, let's look at the panic extreme, where we're all going to be dead by the close of business Tuesday, Eastern Daylight Time. This coronavirus is potentially deadly to everyone, but it looks like the survival rate, it's about 98%. That's not what you hear the media talking about. They don't talk about a survival rate of 97 or 98%. They talk about a mortality rate, or the percent who will die, of 2 to 3%. Both are true, it's just a different side of the same coin. We talk more about mortality rate, and we ignore the survival rate. Talking about mortality rate tends to induce more fear. That's just reality. Now, if you end up in that 2 to 3%, for whom this becomes deadly, that's terrible, obviously. It's also terrible if you happen to know somebody in that 2 to 3%. I'm not saying any of this to minimize how horrible the coronavirus may be, but it is useful to have some perspective. I'll agree with the panicked people that this is way worse than the flu, at least as far as we know so far. But way worse than the flu. You can be way worse than the flu and still not be, we're all going to be dead by Tuesday. It's going to pass. I'm not saying it's going to be a smooth ride between now and when it passes, but it's going to pass. Even the 1918 flu, often known as the Spanish flu, which was horrible beyond our wildest imagination, and which occurred at a time when healthcare was, compared to today, very, very primitive. It passed. It was horrible, but eventually it passed. Please don't confuse this with minimizing what the coronavirus could be. I hope it's not going to be that, and it might not be that, and we'll talk about that in a second. But at its worst, we're not all going to die by Tuesday or by the end of the year. Having said that, let's look at the do-nothing side. The do-nothings say, you know what? I'm pretty young. I'm healthy. Worst case scenario, I'm going to be fine. Maybe it's a bad flu. I've had the flu before. I didn't like it, but I'm not scared of it. It might be true for you. But it's hard to know what percentage of people, even healthy people, who are going to contract the coronavirus and need hospitalization to recover. We don't really know. I haven't found any really solid numbers on what that percentage is, but it's greater than 0. That much we do know. And let's run a few numbers. If there's 370 million people, just total population in the United States, that's roughly correct. If 3% of the population gets infected, that's 18.5 million. It's a lot of people infected. If only 5% of those need hospitalization, that's over 900,000 people who need to go and get hospital care for the coronavirus. I'm not saying we're there. I'm not even saying we're going to get there. I'm saying these are not wild numbers. And the thing about the coronavirus is it didn't get together with other diseases. It didn't get together with heart attacks and strokes and broken arms and legs and all of these other things and say, okay, y'all, strokes and heart attacks, y'all take a break. I'm going to hit the American public right now. But no, they didn't have that meeting. So all of the strokes and all of the heart attacks and broken arms and broken legs are still going to be going into the hospitals. So this, in somewhat randomly selected numbers, keeping the percentages low, this over 900,000 people needing hospitalization, that's on top of the people that the hospitals already have to serve. That overwhelms the healthcare system if it all happens in a short period of time. And there's been a lot about this flattening the curve, which I think is a really important thing. If you haven't, I'm not going to talk much about it today. If you haven't heard about it, Google it. You'll find all kinds of stuff on it. But if we overwhelm our healthcare system, our 97 to 98% survival rate starts going down, and our mortality rate of 2 to 3%, or which actually mortality rate may now be significantly lower if we have healthcare available for everybody who needs it. Those things start changing rapidly. And people start dying not just from the coronavirus, but they start dying from strokes that they would easily survive if they were able to get care. But the system is overwhelmed with all of these people. Which comes back to, I have a duty to the people around me to take reasonable measures to not get the coronavirus because we need to keep the percentage of people infected down. The odds are I'm not going to be one of those who even needs a hospital, let alone ends up dying from the coronavirus. But, I think I said this, it's not all about me. And it ain't all about you either. We have a personal responsibility to our fellow citizens. We exalt individual liberties. It's a very uniquely, I don't know if it's uniquely anymore. It's a very American thing to exalt individual liberties, and I'm at the front of the line celebrating the dignity of the individual and the importance of individual rights. It's also true that we have moral obligations to protect other individuals. We have a moral obligation to first do no harm to our fellow man. There are situations where figuring out if you're actually doing harm or if you're doing good, those can get to be messy calculations. We're not in a messy calculation right now. It's not complicated. And this is not a minor or trivial duty. So while COVID-19 is probably no biggie for me individually, what if I contract it and I spread it to someone for whom it's a very big deal? I may not be devastated myself by this disease, but I could be an amplifier. I have a duty to take reasonable measures not to do that. So now practically every mass gathering is shutting down. Sports, concerts, conferences, all sorts of things shutting down. And some people are going to say, this is a massive, massive overreaction. We've got, several hundred cases in the United States as of the time I'm recording this. We're probably going to tip over 1,000 pretty soon. But we're in a country of 370 million people. This is hardly any people that actually have this. Of course, the qualifier there is that's how many people we actually know have this. There's a lot more people out there who actually have it, and they either don't know or they haven't been tested. But the thing about shutting all of this stuff down too early is that it's not too late. And when it's too late, the whole thing's gotten out of hand, and it is too late. Almost no living human has been alive for a disease that can spread like this and that has the potential to wreak the havoc that this could. Those of us who were born after the Vietnam War, we haven't gone through a death event that has touched every family in the country. This one may not be it, but it may. We have lived this long, extended time in peace and prosperity and improving public health, and it's lulled us into a false and, I would say, dangerous belief that this is the natural state of things. That peace and prosperity and good public health, they just sort of happen. They just happen on their own, and we really don't have to worry about it. But the truth is, what we experience as normal is a massive historic anomaly. The natural state of things is poverty and war and death and despair. It's only by the careful tending to the freedom and the widespread prudent conduct of our lives as citizens, in our own conduct and in the raising of our families and the fostering of communities, these are the things that make what we think of as normal even remotely possible. And even then, it's very, very fragile. With a mindset that health and wealth are the default condition, we look at an oncoming threat, like the coronavirus, and we scoff at it. Ha! This little virus doesn't seem to know how we do things around here. Well, this all is always well assumption is not limited to diseases. We assume that freedom is normal. We forget that a stable government of a free and responsible people is what creates freedom. And we forget that we are those responsible people who must tend constantly to that freedom like a garden in every season. We assume that someone else is tending that garden. The government has made its own share of mistakes in this, a lot. The fact that testing was not ready in time and it is still being slow to be rolled out, there's no excuse for that. They should have seen this coming. Lots of people in the private sector did, and that failure will probably cost lives. We can't assume the government's going to fix this. We do have brilliant people in the private sector who are working on vaccines and cures, and I hope they find a fix, and I hope they find it fast, and I hope that turns this into a great big nothing, and whoever figures it out, or whatever group of people, gets fabulously wealthy because they will have well earned that money. But we cannot assume that government will fix it. we cannot assume that a medicine will be ready in time to stem the tide of this disease. Both of these extremes, the all is always well, do nothing extreme, and the we're all going to die extreme, tend to create the same reaction, which is paralysis. It's paralysis born of complacency or paralysis born of fear, but they both lead to paralysis. Now that paralysis can soon flip, and it switches from being paralyzed to panic and frenzy. And by that time, it's usually too late to avoid the catastrophe. If we cancel all of this stuff and it ends up not too bad, some will say that that is proof that we just massively overreacted. But what I would say is, what about those times when we studied for tests? When we had this test coming up, we studied like crazy, and then we took the test, and we got done and said, man, that test was easy. I shouldn't have studied so hard. But was the test easy, or was the test easy because we studied so hard? So if we get through this and it ends up not being that big a deal, do we look back and say we massively overreacted, or do we look back and we say it's a good thing we canceled all of those events and all of those schools and all of those conferences because that made it not that big a deal? So now that we've looked at both of these extremes, what should our leaders actually be saying to us? Here's what I think they should say. Folks, this coronavirus threat is real, and it could get bad. But we are not powerless. We are strong, and we are prepared. We can all pull together as a community that cares for each other. And if we do that, we're going to make things better. Every last one of us is going to be called on to sacrifice in some way, and some of us cannot predict right now the ways in which we will be called on to sacrifice. For some, it's going to be as simple as staying home for a while and only going out when it's absolutely necessary. For some of us, we're going to have to work at home, and thanks to modern technology, many of us can do that, and it's not that big of a deal. But for many of us in a service-based economy, working from home doesn't work. And you're still going to need to stay home, and there's going to be a financial hit to you. It's going to be hard. We're going to try to figure out how to help you. We're going to try to come alongside of you in this time and make sure that you're not the only one getting hit by this. Many people's businesses are going to get hard, and you're going to lose money. Some people are going to get sick. Some will be very sick. We are going to fight to save every life. There is not a single one of us that doesn't matter, and every one of us will grieve if we lose even one. And we're going to lose some. That's just the truth. We all have to do our part to stop this virus from spreading. Even if you're not vulnerable, you have a neighbor nearby, a relative, a friend, someone you would normally see often who is vulnerable. Don't get this thing and pass it on to that neighbor. If we can pull together, and we can, we will make this emergency shorter, and we will make it less severe, and we will save lives. And when it's over, we will pull together again. We will pull together some more, and we will mourn what we have lost. We will celebrate what we have saved, and we will rebuild and repair what has been damaged. I never hope for hardship, but I know that hardship does draw us together, and it will make us stronger. My friends, this will pass. We will get through this, and we will get through it together. For Lovins Trosclair and the Personal Responsibility Lawyer, I'm Michael Lovins. I can't complain. Sometimes I still do. This episode of the Personal Responsibility Lawyer Podcast is brought to you by my law firm, Lovins Trosclair, where we use the civil justice system to hold people responsible for irresponsible choices when those irresponsible choices cause serious injuries and sometimes even death. We are personal injury trial lawyers, but we approach our cases a little differently than a lot of other lawyers who do the same basic kind of work. I really, really hope that you do not need us, but if you do need us, please call us before evidence gets lost. You can call us at 512-535-1649. Tell us you heard about us on the Personal Responsibility Lawyer Podcast. You can also go to our website on the interwebs at www.ltlegalteam.com. That's L as in Lovins, T as in Trosclair, legalteam.com. We are here to help. Thank you for listening to the Personal Responsibility Lawyer Podcast. If you like what you've heard or if you've learned something interesting, please do me a favor and rate the show on iTunes. It really does help. You can get more information about this show, including the show notes, at my personal website, michaellovins.com. And now I have to do some disclaimers where I say stuff that you already knew, but I got to say it anyway so that I keep the state bar happy. This podcast is not legal advice. You listening to this podcast does not make me your lawyer or you my client. Neither does it make any of my guests your lawyer. If you want me to be your lawyer, contact my office. If I can represent you, we will execute a written contract stating the specific terms under which I agree to represent you. Did you really need me to tell you that? I really, really hope not. Also, I am not certified by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization as a personal responsibility lawyer because they don't know what that is. They also have not certified me in any other areas of specialty that they actually do recognize. I think that does it for disclaimers. For Lovins Trosclair and the Personal Responsibility Lawyer Podcast, I am Michael Lovins. We'll see you next time.